platform. Can you hear me? Speaker mic platform. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mario.
Yes. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Madam Speaker,
There'll now be a moment of silent prayer or meditation. May we be seated. Amen. Order, honorable members. Order. Honorable members, can you please be seated? Find your seats. Thank you. Honorable members, before we proceed with our business, I wish to announce that the vacancy which occurred in the National Assembly owing to the resignation of Dr. S.M. Dlomo has been filled by nomination of Ms. D.R. Ntuli with effect from 7 November 2025. The member has made and subscribed to the oath in the office of the Speaker. I want to welcome the honorable member, and if she can please stand. Thank you very much. You are most welcome. I will now ask the Secretary to read the first to the third orders together.
Medium-term budget policy statement. Introduction, Adjustments Appropriation Bill. Introduction, Taxation Laws Amendment Bill.
I now recognize the Honorable Minister of Finance.
Medium-term budget policy statement. Introduction, Adjustments.
Order, honorable members. Honorable members, we are here to receive from the Minister of Finance the tabling of the medium-term budget policy statement and the introduction of the Adjustment Appropriation Bill and the introduction of the Taxation Laws Amendment Bill. Once again, may I ask members to take their seats, and just to indicate that we are attending to the issue of the air conditioning. I can see that it's not the private sun that members may be having. Some of you, yes, Mr. President, there is a private sun for some of us, but it's not that, it's just the heat. That's why even our gentlemen are going on. So, Honorable Member, Minister, you can table your medium-term budget policy statement.
Speaker of the National Assembly, Togo Titiza, Deputy Speaker, Aneli Lord-Triat, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Refilo Mtsweni Tsipane, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Province, Les Govenda, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, His Excellency, the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, Cabinet colleagues, honorable members, members of the Executive Council for Finance in Provinces, Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, Lesesha Kganyago, Commissioner of the South African Revenue Service, Edward Kisvete, Chairperson of the Financial and Fiscal Commission, Patience Mbava, fellow South Africans. We convene at a time when South Africa, like many nations around the world, is grappling with intensifying global competition and mounting economic and political divisions. It is against this fractured landscape that South Africa has been falsely accused of genocide against its white community and threatened with punitive sanctions based on falsehood. Let me thank the many communities here at home and around the world that have rejected the false narrative and the fear, hate, and disinformation they represent, and instead chosen to defend the principles of solidarity and equality. The members of the African community who recently came out publicly refusing to be used as a pawn or portrayed as victims provide us with a timely reminder of our responsibility to forge collective prosperity grounded in truth, justice, and mutual respect. They made the call not in our name. And that to me was an important patriotic call. Madam Speaker, it is in this spirit that I table the following documents before this House. A Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, Adjustment Appropriation Bill, Taxation Laws Amendment Bill, Tax Administration Laws Amendment Bill, and this medium budget policy statement. As we table this policy statement, we have reason to be optimistic about the future of our country. Our optimism is rooted in the progress we've made in keeping the promises we have set out. A promise to grow the economy faster, to strengthen public finances, and to improve life for all South Africans. 2 years ago, we committed to stabilizing public debt in the current year and then begin to reduce it. Despite a challenging environment of persistently low economic growth, we are on track to achieving this goal. We also committed to remove South Africa from the Financial Action Task Force grey list. We have delivered on this commitment in just 2.5 years. This is thanks to collaboration across government departments, law enforcement agencies, and the private sector. Exiting grey listing enhances South Africa's attractiveness to investors and make it easier to do business with us. However, we cannot afford to be complacent. FATF's next mutual evaluation of South Africa begins in the first half of 2026. We must continue to tackle money laundering and terrorism financing to stay off the grey list. Honourable members, we also promise to use our presidency of the first African G20 to firmly place Africa on the global agenda. As we approach the final stretch of our presidency, we have successfully concluded meetings of the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors, brokering critical consensus for the continent's development. We are ready for the Leaders' Summit in Johannesburg just over a week's time. Despite all of this progress, we must remain realistic about the present and the action it demands. South Africa's most pressing challenge remains accelerated economic growth to create jobs and reduce poverty at the scale required. Drawing lessons from the 2025 budget process, we have engaged extensively to build consensus on how to achieve faster growth and leverage public finances to attract investment needed to create jobs and improve life for all. Allow me to turn to the economic outlook. Madam Speaker, South Africa's economic prospects are shaped not only by domestic factors, but by also global developments. Global growth is estimated to slow slightly to 3.2% in 2025. Amid ongoing trade tensions, geopolitical uncertainty, and supply chain disruptions, while the shocks of the unilateral tariffs imposed by the United States have not materialized severely as expected, their delayed effects, coupled with the rising protectionism, pose future risks to global productivity and price stability. Global equity markets have surged, driven by AI-related stocks and central bank rate cuts. But this rally carries the risk of sudden reversals. Given this uncertainty, it is critical that we leverage the immense opportunities presented by the Sub-Sahara region. We continue to make progress in the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to strengthen multilateralism and regional cooperation.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day, Father. Thank you.
Order, Honorable Nanda.
Domestically, we forecast real GDP growth at 1.2% for 2025, more than double the economic growth in 2024. We now forecast real GDP growth will average 1.8% between 2026 and 2028. Madam Speaker, the structural reforms we have embarked on, particularly in the energy and logistics, will be key to lifting our rate of growth closer to levels demanded by our developmental needs. Our strategy for faster growth and healthier finances continues to be anchored on 4 pillars. The first is maintaining macroeconomic stability. The second is implementing structural reforms. The third is building state capability. And the fourth, supporting growth-enhancing infrastructure. Madam Speaker, faster economic growth requires effective macroeconomic management. Over the past year, National Treasury and the Reserve Bank have jointly assessed the impact of a lower target on our economy and the fiscal framework. This work has now been concluded and recommends a revision to the target to strengthen the framework and enhance price stability by better anchoring inflation expectations and aligning South Africa to international best practice. Today, I announce a new inflation target for South Africa of 3% with a 1 percentage point tolerance band. This decision follows agreement between the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank and my consultation with the President and Cabinet. The 1 percentage point band provides flexibility to accommodate unexpected inflationary shocks. This new target immediately replaces the previous target range between 3% and 6% and will be implemented over the next 2 years. Over time, the lower target will decrease inflation expectation and inflation creating room for lower interest rates. This supports household spending and business investment, boosting economic growth and job creation. The short-term fiscal cost of lower target, which include nominal GDP and revenue growth, will make achieving fiscal targets more challenging. Yet, the long-term benefits of taking this step far outweigh this cost. We remain committed to ensuring that our macroeconomic policies serve the best interest of all South Africans. Madam Speaker, our fiscal strategy aims to achieve the following goals. Anchor fiscal policy by stabilizing debt and growing the primary budget surplus. Mobilize and direct more resources towards infrastructure investment and improving efficiency and effectiveness of spending. I'm pleased to inform the House and the country that we are on track to restore fiscal sustainability. Government debt will stabilize in 25-26 at 77.9% of GDP. This is the first time since 2008 financial crisis that public debt will not grow as a percentage of GDP. Since 2008, spending has consistently exceeded revenue, driving up debt and debt service costs. These costs crowded out spending on critical services and exerted pressure on lending rates across the economy. But we are now turning this around. This year, revenues will exceed the budget estimate by 19.3 billion. Meanwhile, debt service costs will be lower by 4.8 billion. Over the MTF, debt service costs will grow by 3.87% annually. This is a significant reduction from the 7.4% growth anticipated at the time of the 2025 budget. We will also achieve a primary budget surplus of 68.5 billion, or 0.9% of the GDP this year. This will grow to 224 billion by 2028. Let me just explain this thing a bit. A primary surplus is quite critical because in the absence of that primary surplus, you are not going to impact on the debt trajectory. The primary surplus help to change that debt structure in a downward spiral. What are the effects of that? Your debt service costs come down. Once your debt service costs come down, sir, revenue becomes available to fund our developmental goals. The overall budget deficits will now narrow from 4.5% of GDP in 2025-26 to 2.7% in 28-29. Madam Speaker, to further ensure long-term sustainability of public finances, the government is considering options for a form of fiscal anchor. We're exploring what we call a principle-led approach that provides for a clear parliamentary oversight, stronger reporting on fiscal risk, and transparency on distributional impacts. Earlier this year, we published a discussion paper on this topic, and consultation with stakeholders and experts are ongoing. The better than estimated tax revenue of 19.7 billion is due to stronger household expenditure, which has boosted value-added tax collection and improvements in corporate tax receipts and dividend taxes. Lower than expected VAT refunds also contributed to improved revenue outlook. As indicated in 2025 budget, an additional 4 billion was allocated to the South African Revenue Service. This allocation was intended in part to strengthen debt collection and thereby increase revenue collection by between 20 and 50 billion per year. We'll continue to monitor SARS revenue performance for the remainder of the year. This assessment will inform whether the 20 billion additional tax increases for 2026 budget, as earlier proposed, can be withdrawn. A final decision, let me just say, if it withdrawn, and the 20 billion is not achieved, there are two options open to us. Is to then raise taxes or cut expenditure. There's no two ways. That's how this thing works. We must find revenue or cut expenditure. Honorable members, South Africa faces problems of illicit trade that threatens our economy, endangers consumers, and robs the fiscus of billions in revenue. The growing market for illicit cigarettes and alcohol poses serious risk to public health and undermine legitimate business. Each year, billions of rands in taxes go uncollected, funds that could have closed our revenue gap and avoided tax increases entirely. According to SARS, since 2020, government has lost around 40 billion in excise revenues to the cigarette black market. This same is true for illicit alcohol and fuel. Government is clamping down on this illegal trade, and in the last 6 months, SARS suspended 3 licenses for non-compliant tobacco production. The Financial Intelligence Center has provided intelligence reports to SARS to assist in investigation of criminal syndicates. Together, they have identified illicit markets in tobacco, precious metals, fuel, and procurement fraud. Custom officials must fulfill their duty to prevent criminals from dodging taxes and flooding our markets with dangerous products. Of course, for them to achieve that, just if I may explain, they will have to need the full might of the law enforcement agencies behind them. That coordinated work is quite important. I'm pleased to inform this House that Cabinet has already taken a decision that coordinated work must take place. Madam Speaker, the adjustment in revenue means that we can make changes to our spending estimates. For the current year, additional expenditure of 15.8 billion rand is proposed amongst the in-year adjustment, and is also 2 billion rand for the building of Parliament and 1 billion rand for the Independent Electoral Commission for the 2026 municipal election. Let me explain a bit. Earlier on, if you were listening, I said, this year, we've got an over collection of about 19.3 billion rand. That's what I said earlier on. We realize that we may not have sufficient resources next year. What we have done is to say, what are the recurrent expenditures for next year? which we can fund this year. What this 15.8 billion does, it takes those recurrent expenditures for the following year while bringing them forward and funding them in this specific year. In addition, the spending announced in May budget for the national dialogue as well as its carry-through costs are catered for here. These allocations are on top of the additional funding provisions for education and health announced in the May budget. Madam Speaker, President Ramaphosa has consistently spoken of infrastructure as the flywheel of our economy. In line with this vision and advancing our pillar of growth enhancing infrastructure, we are shifting the composition of spending from consumption to investment. Capital payments are the fastest growing expenditure item at 7.5% over the medium term. We are leveraging public resources to mobilize private finance and expertise at scale to strengthen service delivery, improve spending effectiveness, and drive high economic growth. The amendments to the PPP regulations took effect from the 1st of June 2025, and these unlock potential across spheres of government and streamline approvals for smaller projects. 3 weeks ago, new guidelines on unsolicited bids and fiscal commitments and contingent liabilities were issued, and these took effect immediately. The unsolicited bid guidelines provides a clear structured pathway for the private sector to submit project ideas to government. The other guideline provides a framework for reporting and managing of fiscal commitments and contingent liabilities arising out of the PPP projects. Municipality PPP regulations will be amended by 2026. Leverage, and I'm still going to give you a report, President, because you said I must do it this year. It has been difficult to finish this year because of a number of regulation framework that accompanies that. Leveraging lessons from the renewable IPP projects to streamline planning and procurement, the Department of Transport private sector participation unit is reviving the passenger transport and logistics sector. Following strong interest from the freight logistic request for information, the unit will issue the first rail corridor request for proposal by December 2025, with others following in early 2026. The unit has also issued requests for information for investment opportunities in modernizing and growing the passenger rail system. Water Partnership Office is making progress in preparing non-revenue water and reuse projects across municipalities. I mean, this term non-revenue water is still, I can't understand it. I always, people, why do you say this is non-revenue water? It's water that is transported from, an example, from a water board to a municipalities, it gets lost on the process. And we call it non-revenue water, whereas it's wasted water. Okay. These will create robust pipeline for the private sector to co-invest, and we have reconfigured budget facility for infrastructure to run for 4 bid windows annually instead of just 1. Since the configuration, the budget facility for infrastructure has received 28 submissions. Out of those, 9 projects were accepted for detailed analysis. Funding for the tune of 4.1 billion is also allocated for disaster relief to fix schools, pipelines, clinics, and substation damage between the last year and this year flooding in KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, and Eastern Cape. To raise the funding for these BFI projects, a new infrastructure bond will be launched soon to raise a minimum of 15 billion. The bond forms part of our efforts to introduce dedicated financing instrument that can mobilize cheaper financing to support infrastructure agenda. Government will also contribute to 2 billion to capitalize the credit guarantee facility. If you don't understand it clearly, please meet Dr. Ramokgopa. That's his pet project. on the transmission line. Initially, the vehicle will support electricity transmission expansion, directly contribute to our efforts at energy security, while also driving decarbonization. Let me just pause again. What Dr. Ramkhopa says is that in provinces such as Northern Cape, where you have renewable projects, I'm going to use his term, we can't evacuate the electrons. So what does that mean is that we can't take the electricity out of the Northern Cape because there are no transmission lines. And this is what the project is intended to do. This heralds a new era in triple Ps, where private investment in high voltage transmission lines is enabled. This is really progress in our movement away from merely fixing the power utility to securing power to the grid from a range of sources. This is a key and innovative part of infrastructure reforms developed with international partners to de-risk private investment without state guarantees. We're also committed to simplifying the institutional arrangements across the infrastructure ecosystem. The new Infrastructure Finance and Implementation Support Agency will be in place by March. The agency will provide project preparation support to supply the BFI pipeline. It will centralize infrastructure financing functions to systematically crowd in private capital and promote the use of alternative delivery mechanisms. Honourable members, this is how we will ensure that our goal of public sector investment in infrastructure exceeds the 1 trillion mark over the next 3 years. Madam Speaker, we estimate that tax collection will remain buoyant over the medium term. Despite the higher than expected revenue performance in 2025-26, gross revenue are projected to fall short of 2025 budget estimates by around 15.7 billion over the next 2 years. Improving tax revenue will require more sustainable economic growth and further gains in tax compliance and administration. Over the medium term, consolidated spending will increase from 2.6 trillion this year to 2.9 trillion in 28-29. Our commitment to support low-income and vulnerable households through education, health, and social protection remains. The lion's share of the consolidated non-interest spending, approximately 61% over the next 3 years, continues to fund the basket of government-provided services and benefits that reduce the cost of living of our citizens. Madam Speaker, this spending is our commitment to the redistribution of income and opportunities in favor of the most vulnerable households in our society. To build on the work of spending reviews, we have got something called targeted responsible savings underway. Honourable members, eliminating waste and inefficiency in government is non-negotiable if we are to maintain public trust that tax money is spent responsibly. The Targeted and Responsible Savings Initiative systematically identifies duplication, eliminates waste, reorganizes programs to deliver value for money. We are implementing medium-term savings of 6.7 billion by closing or scaling down low priority and underperforming programs immediately. More than half of this involves identifying people who are double dipping and defrauding in the social grant system. We're also scaling down the public transport network grant. The grant has failed to meet the objectives, and some cities have failed entirely to get the projects off the ground. An integrated public transport system is essential to support the working class communities. We will be reconsidering how to lower the cost of mobility and rework the institutional framework. Commuter rail is the backbone of our public transport system. PRASA is making some progress in revitalizing our rail system. 11.8 million passenger trips in 2022-23 to 116 million last year. This is only the start of the broader continuous process to redirect funds from inefficient programs to pressing national priorities. An update will be provided in the February budget. Madam Speaker, let me now turn to the subnational sphere. Allocation to provinces protect frontline services. For municipalities, they ensure continued provision of basic services that include water, refuse removal, sanitation, and electricity. The share of the national raised revenue for provinces and municipalities will respectively increase to 4.24 and 9.7% over the medium term. The allocation, among other things, also cater for changes in population growth and to compensate municipalities for increase in bulk services, service charges related to free basic services. In addition, they also ensure the placing of local government operating capacity on firm grounding. Madam Speaker, we are making steady progress on structural reforms that are a key pillar to our strategy of growing the economy. These structural reforms are crucial to dismantling the binding constraints that have held back our economy. They are also about ensuring that every lever of the state works efficiently and effectively towards the same goal of a stably growing, competitive, and inclusive growth. Through Operation Vulindlela, now in phase 2, since it started in 2021, we are building a tangible momentum across energy, logistics, water, and now critical in local government, spatial integration, and digital transformation. Not long ago, our country was on the brink of energy crisis. Unreliable electricity supply threatened to derail our economy and the transformation of our society. I'm pleased to say that we have avoided that scenario, and instead, we have begun a march towards reliable supply of energy. Load shedding has come down significantly. Through focused and targeted interventions led by Operation Vulindlela, we are transforming the sector. We are building competitive wholesale market that gives investors certainty. The National Transmission Company has now applied for its market operator license. We are investing in new capacity and alternative sources. More than 2,220 megawatts of solar, wind, and battery projects are in development, with 720 megawatts at advanced stage. Eskom has added 800 megawatts from Kusile Unit 6 and is showing signs of operational and financial improvements. The movement of freight within the country faced serious challenges, resulting in traffic congestion as the transport of goods shifted from rail. This led to an overall decline in the volume of goods and export transited. Reforms in freight logistics are again in gaining speed. 11 private train operators now have slots on 41 routes across 6 corridors. Port efficiency is improving, with vessel waiting time down from 75%, while container handling is faster, with Durban Pier 2 welcoming private operators. We expect to unlock 200 billion in investment over the next 5 years. These much-needed reforms in logistics will increase the volume of rail freight, reduce port congestion, improve the country's economic performance. Water security is a core constraint. We are moving faster to provide legislative certainty, clarity that will stabilize the sector. The Water Service Amendment Bill clarifies institutional rule, which will, while the National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency launches in April 2026. We're also ensuring that investment in water infrastructure addresses the problem of maintenance and old infrastructure. To attract skills, investment, and tourism, we have modernized our visa system by clearing 300,000 backlog. These reforms demonstrate we have and are creating space for private sector investment and building infrastructure. Madam Speaker, municipalities are at the forefront of providing essential services. However, many are fraught with capacity constraints that hinder their ability to deal with allocated budgets into reliable services. It is for this reason that several reforms have been introduced to urgently remedy this untenable situation. Let me just give and again highlight a particular example. Minister Hlabisa will tell you, as we are allocating the emergency relief for disaster this year, we were also allocating to municipalities that were allocated last year who have not been able to spend last year's allocation. That's the kind of constraint we need to attend to. We are piloting utility reform program to stabilize and professionalize water and electricity businesses in a few municipalities in Mpumalanga to address persistent underspending and capacity constraints at the local level while reforming the municipal infrastructure grant. Where municipalities show persistent failure, delivery will shift to an indirect model through agencies such as like MISA and DBC, coupled with time-bound capability plans aimed at restoring direct funding. We're seeing encouraging progress in metro trading service reform. Over the 2026 budget, 19.3 billion rand has been reallocated towards this reform in line with council-approved improvement plans. Financial sustainability is improving through better billing, tight credit controls, cost-reflective tariffs with indigent protection and co-funding crowding in concessional and commercial finance. Today, we launch a government's first procurement payment dashboard using data for the basic accounting system. The dashboard is available on the National Treasury e-tender website, showing the payments made to suppliers by most national and provincial government as captured on our payment system. This represents a massive step forward in procurement transparency. The dashboard will identify inefficiencies, anomalies, and uncovering opportunities for consolidation. It also enables analysis of procurement expenditure and the suppliers that do business with state, give citizens, academic and civil society the ability to hold departments accountable, supporting efforts to fight corruption and fraud. Let me just illustrate this point. If you had this system during Tembisa Hospital, what?
Order, honorable members. Let's allow the minister to make his example. Order.
What the system does.
Order.
If you read this SIU report, what they were doing, they would avoid the tendering system by saying, putting all tenders that are below 500, you are not supposed to tender. You are supposed to ask for 3 quotes. And then people would go on and ask for 3 quotes and split tenders to be under 500. And then this, at the national level, anywhere else would not be able to track that conduct. What this system does is going to help us to track that conduct and be able to raise flags, to raise red flags at an appropriate time. I know there are some colleagues who says they must abolish tenders. They must first change the constitution before they can do that. We are also waging war.
Minister is proceeding on the next page. I think he's done with his example, so let's allow him to continue. Honorable Minister, you can proceed. Order. Order.
We are also waging war on ghost workers in public service. We have heard calls from political parties and civil society. National Treasury is working closely with the Department of Public Service and Administration and Home Affairs on data-driven approach that integrates systems across the government. We are beginning to see the result of this collaboration. We have already uncovered close to 9,000 high-risk cases that have been flagged for further verification. The early retirement program, which provides financial incentive for employees to exit the public service from October 2025, allows for us to rejuvenate the public service. These interventions will deliver long-term average savings of around 3.5 billion per annum. More importantly, they demonstrate our commitment to fiscal discipline and ensure that every rand spent contributes effectively to growth and service delivery. Madam Speaker, the presentation of the medium-term budget policy statement sends a clear message that South Africa is choosing growth, stability, and reform. It represents our commitment to an open, transparent budget process. It is intended to empower all stakeholders to contribute to the discussion of the nation's priorities. It makes transparent the budget framework through which the government seeks to achieve the nation's social and economic development. We will use our collective efforts to increase the pace and scale of tackling unemployment and building stronger economy. Speaker, as I close, allow me to express my deepest gratitude to the President, as usual, and the Deputy President for the Council of their support and for their leadership. Thank you all to the Deputy Ministers of Finance and the excellent National Treasury team led by the Director General. They have walked this path with me, sharing freely the insight, expertise, and passion for our country. Thank you to the Commissioner of the South African Revenue Services and the Governor for the South African Reserve Bank. Thank you to my cabinet colleagues, the ministers of the Committee on the Budget and the Budget Council from the provinces, who share the heavy load of tough decisions that must be taken in the sustainability of our finances. Thank you as well to what is called the Technical Committee on the Budget, which is composed of a few DGs who have done splendid work. To the Parliamentary Committee of Finance, Appropriation and Public Action, I express my sincere appreciation to all of you. And lastly, Umam Chawe and the family in general for understanding. And to the citizens of this beautiful country, for your faith in us, in our is our motivation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Order, honorable members. Order. Order. Honorable members. I thank the Honorable Minister. Order. Honorable Minister. You can take your seat so that I thank you properly. I want to thank you for your presentation, Honorable Minister. And I will take note of you, Minister Mackenzie. And the papers tabled by the Minister will be referred to the relevant committees. And we trust that this spirit shown today will proceed towards February for the tabling of the budget. Honorable Mackenzie.
Honorable Speaker, yeah, this is my fence.
Honorable Mackenzie,
they must make a...
Honorable Mackenzie, what's the point of order?
The finance minister has proven that we've turned the corner. He just made one mistake.
Honorable,
he didn't thank the government in waiting forever. For waiting forever.
Order, Honorable Minister, that's not the point of order.
But is a town minister.
Order, I request members to stand and wait for the presiding officer and the maids to leave the chamber. That concludes the business for the day and the House is adjourned.